Drinking coffee or water?
Water. I'm so over caffeinated right now. Do you want some caffeine?
I mean, sure.
There's a nitro drink.
This will keep you up to tomorrow afternoon, basically.
Yeah. I don't have
So what is nitro? It's just got a lot of caffeine or something?
Don't ask questions. It's called nitro. Do you need to know anything else?
It's got nitrogen in it. That's ridiculous. I mean, what we breathe is 78% nitrogen anyway. What do you need to add more for? Most people think that they're breathing oxygen, and they're actually breathing 78% nitrogen. You need like a milk bar, like from Clockwork Orange.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that top 3 Kubrick film for you?
Clockwork Orange? It's pretty good. I mean, it's demented. Jarring, I'd say.
Okay. Okay. So first, let's step back and big congrats on getting Neuralink implanted into a human. That's a historic step for Neuralink. And
thanks. Yeah.
There's many more to come.
Yeah, we just obviously have our second implant as well.
How did that go?
So far, so good. There looks like we've got, I think, on the order of 400 electrodes that are providing signals. So
nice.
Yeah.
How quickly do you think the number of human participants will scale?
It depends somewhat on the regulatory approval, the rate at which we get regulatory approvals. So we're hoping to do 10 by the end of this year, total of 10. So 8 more.
And with each one, you're going to be learning a lot of lessons about the neurobiology of the brain, the everything, the whole chain of the Neuralink, the decoding, the signal processing, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think it's obviously going to get better with each one. I mean, I don't want to jinx it, but it seems to have gone extremely well with the second implant. So there's a lot of signal, a lot of electrodes. It's working very well.
What improvements do you think we'll see in Neuralink in the coming, let's get crazy, coming years?
I mean, in years, it's going to be gigantic because we'll increase the number of electrodes dramatically. We'll improve the signal processing. So, we even with only roughly, 10-15% of the electrodes working with Nolan, with our first patient, we were able to get to achieve a bits per second. That's twice the world record. So I think we'll start like vastly exceeding the world record by orders of magnitude in the years to come. So start getting to 100 bits per second, 1,000. Maybe if like 5 years from now, we might be at a megabit, like faster than any human could possibly communicate by typing or speaking.
Yeah, that BPS is an interesting metric to measure. There might be a big leap in the experience once you reach a certain level of BPS.
Yeah.
Like entire new ways of interacting with the computer might be unlocked.
And with humans.
With other humans.
Provided they have they want a Neuralink too.
Right.
Otherwise, they won't be able to absorb the signals fast enough.
Do you think they'll improve the quality of intellectual discourse?
Well, I think you could think of it, if you were to slow down communication, how do you feel about that? If you'd only talk at, let's say, 1/10 of normal speed, you'd be like, wow, that's agonizingly slow.
Yeah.
So now imagine you could communicate clearly at 10 or 100 or 1,000 times faster than normal.
Listen, I'm pretty sure nobody in their right mind listens to me at 1x. They listen at 2x. So I can only imagine what 10x would feel like, or I could actually understand it.
I usually default to 1.5x. You can do 2x, but actually, if I'm trying to if I'm listening to somebody go to in like sort of 15-20 minute segments to go to sleep, then I'll do it 1.5x. Mm-hmm. If I'm paying attention, I'll do 2x.
Right.
But actually, if you start actually listen to podcasts or sort of audiobooks or anything if you get used to doing it at 1.5, then 1 sounds painfully slow.
I'm still holding on to one because I'm afraid. I'm afraid of myself becoming bored with the reality, with the real world where everyone's speaking in 1x.
Well, it depends on the person. You can speak very fast. Like we can communicate very quickly, and also if you use a wide range of if your vocabulary is larger, your effective bit rate is higher.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
The effective bit rate. I mean, that is the question: is how much information is actually compressed in the low bit transfer of language.
Yeah. If there's a single word that is able to convey something that would normally require I don't know 10 simple words, then you've got a maybe a 10x compression on your hands. And that's really like with memes. Memes are like data compression. It conveys a whole. You're simultaneously hit with a wide range of symbols that you can interpret, and it's you kind of get it faster than if it were words or a simple picture.
And of course, you're referring to memes broadly, like ideas.
Yeah, there's an entire idea structure that is like an idea template, and then you can add something to that idea template. But somebody has that pre-existing idea template in their head. So when you add that incremental bit of information, you're conveying much more than if you just said a few words. It's everything associated with that meme.
You think there'll be emergent leaps of capability as you scale the number of electrodes? Like
Yeah.
there'll be a certain. Do you think there'll be like actual number where it just the human experience will be altered?
Yes.
What do you think that number might be? Whether electrodes or BPS? We of course don't know for sure, but is this 10,000, 100,000?
Yeah, I mean, certainly if you're anywhere at 10,000 bits per second, I mean, that's vastly faster than any human can communicate right now. If you think of what is the average bits per second of a human, it is less than 1 bit per second over the course of a day, because there are 86,400 seconds in a day, and you don't communicate 86,400 tokens in a day. Therefore, your bits per second is less than 1, averaged over 24 hours. It's quite slow. And now, even if you're communicating very quickly, and you're talking to somebody who understands what you're saying, because in order to communicate, you have to, at least to some degree, model the mind state of the person to whom you're speaking. Then take the concept you're trying to convey, compress that into a small number of syllables, speak them, and hope that the other person decompresses them into a conceptual structure that is as close to what you have in your mind as possible.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of signal loss there in that process.
Yeah, very lossy compression and decompression, and a lot of what your neurons are doing is distilling the concepts down to a small number of symbols of say syllables that I'm speaking, or keystrokes, whatever the case may be. So that's a lot of what your brain computation is doing. Now, there is an argument that that's actually a healthy thing to do or a helpful thing to do, because as you try to compress complex concepts, you're perhaps forced to distill what is most essential in those concepts, as opposed to just all the fluff. So in the process of compression, you distill things down to what matters the most, because you can only say a few things. So that is perhaps helpful. I think we'll probably get, if our data rate increases, it's highly probable that we'll become far more verbose. Just like your computer, when computers had my first computer had 8K of RAM, so you really thought about every byte. And, now you got computers with many gigabytes of RAM. So, if you want to do an iPhone app that just says hello world, it's probably, I don't know, several megabytes minimum. A bunch of fluff, but nonetheless, we still prefer to have the computer with the more memory and more compute. So the long-term aspiration of Neuralink is to improve the AI-human symbiosis by increasing the bandwidth of the communication. Because if in the most benign scenario of AI, you have to consider that the AI is simply going to get bored waiting for you to spit out a few words. I mean, if the AI can communicate at terabits per second and you're communicating at, bits per second, yeah, it's like talking to a tree.
Well, it is a very interesting question for a super intelligent species. What use are humans?
I think there is some argument for humans as a source of will.
Well,
Will, yeah, source of will or purpose. So if you consider the human mind as being essentially there's the primitive limbic elements, which basically even like reptiles have, and there's the cortex, that's the thinking and planning part of the brain. Now, the cortex is much smarter than the limbic system, and yet is largely in service to the limbic system. It's trying to make the limbic system happy. I mean, the sheer amount of compute that's gone into people trying to get laid is insane. Without actually seeking procreation, they're just literally trying to do this sort of simple motion, and they get a kick out of it.
Yeah.
So this simple, which in the abstract rather absurd motion, which is sex, the cortex is putting a massive amount of compute into trying to figure out how to do that.
So like 90% of distributed compute of the human species is spent on trying to get laid, probably. Like
A massive
large
amount.
percentage.
Yeah. There's no purpose to most sex except hedonistic. It's just sort of a joy or whatever, dopamine release. Now, once in a while, it's procreation, but for humans, modern humans, it's mostly recreational. And so your cortex, much smarter than your limbic system, is trying to make the limbic system happy because the limbic system wants to have sex. So, or wants some tasty food or whatever the case may be. And then that is then further augmented by the tertiary system, which is your phone, your laptop, iPad, whatever, all your computing stuff. That's your tertiary layer. So you're actually already a cyborg. You have this tertiary compute layer, which is in the form of your computer with all the applications, all your compute devices. And so in the getting laid front, there's actually a massive amount of digital compute also trying to get laid. With like Tinder and whatever,
Yeah. So the compute that we humans have built is also participating.
Yeah. I mean, there's like gigawatts of compute going into getting laid, of digital compute.
Yeah. What if AGI was...
This is happening as we speak.
If we merge with AI, it's just going to expand the compute that we humans use.
Pretty much.
To try to get laid.
It's one of the things, certainly, yeah.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that yes, like is there a use for humans? Well, there's this fundamental question of what's the meaning of life? Why do anything at all? And so if our simple limbic system provides a source of will to do something, that then goes to our cortex, that then goes to our, tertiary compute layer, then, I don't know, it might actually be that the AI in a benign scenario is simply trying to make the human limbic system happy.
Yeah, it seems like the will is not just about the limbic system. There's a lot of interesting, complicated things in there. We also want power.
That's limbic too, I think.
But then we also want to, in a kind of cooperative way, alleviate the suffering in the world.
Not everybody does, but yeah, sure. Some people do.
As a group of humans, when we get together, we start to have this kind of collective intelligence that is more complex in its will than the underlying individual descendants of apes, right? So there's like other motivations, and that could be a really interesting source of an objective function for AGI.
Yeah. I mean, there are these sort of fairly cerebral or kind of higher level goals. I mean, for me, it's like, what's the meaning of life? Or understanding the nature of the universe is of great interest to me, and hopefully to the AI. And that's the mission of XAI and Grok, is understand the universe.
So do you think people, when you have a Neuralink with 10,000, 100,000 channels, most of the use cases will be communication with AI systems?
Well, if it's assuming that they're not, I mean, there's solving basic neurological issues that people have. If they've got damaged neurons in their spinal cord or neck, or as is the case with our first two patients, then this obviously the first order of business is solving fundamental neuron damage in the spinal cord, neck, or in the brain itself. So our second product is called Blindsight, which is to enable people who are completely blind, lost both eyes or optic nerve, or just can't see at all, to be able to see by directly triggering the neurons in the visual cortex. So we're just starting at the basics here. This is like very the simple stuff, relatively speaking, is solving neuron damage. Mm-hmm. It can also solve, I think, probably schizophrenia. If people have seizures of some kind, it could probably solve that. It could help with memory. There's like a kind of a tech tree, if you will, of like you got the basics. Like you need literacy before you can have, Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Do you have letters and alphabet? Okay, great. Words, then eventually you get sagas. So, I think there may be some, things to worry about in the future, but the first several years are really just solving basic neurological damage. Like for people who have essentially complete or near complete loss from the brain to the body, like Stephen Hawking would be an example, the Neuralink would be incredibly profound. Because, you can imagine if Stephen Hawking could communicate as fast as we're communicating, perhaps faster. And that's certainly possible. Probable, in fact. Likely, I'd say.
So there's a kind of dual track of medical and non-medical, meaning, so everything you've talked about could be applied to people who are non-disabled in the future?
The logical thing to do is, sensible thing to do is to start off solving basic neuron damage issues.
Yes.
Because there's obviously some risk with a new device. You can't get the risk down at zero. It's not possible. So you want to have the highest possible reward, given there's a certain irreducible risk. And if somebody's able to have a profound improvement in their communication, that's worth the risk.
As you get the risk down.
Yeah, as you get the risk down, and once the risk is down to if you have like thousands of people that have been using it for years, and the risk is minimal, then perhaps at that point you could consider saying, okay, let's aim for augmentation. Now I think we're actually going to aim for augmentation with people who have neuron damage. So we're not just aiming to give people a communication data rate equivalent to normal humans. We're aiming to give people who have, quadriplegic or maybe have complete loss of the connection to the brain and body, a communication data rate that exceeds normal humans. Mm-hmm. While we're in there, why not? Let's give people superpowers.
And the same for vision. As you restore vision, there could be aspects of that restoration that are superhuman. Yeah.
At first, the vision restoration will be low res. Because you have to say, like, how many neurons can you put in there and trigger, and you can do things where you adjust the electric field. So, like, even if you've got, say, 10,000 neurons, it's not just 10,000 pixels, because you can adjust the field between the neurons and do them in patterns in order to get, have say 10,000 electrodes effectively give you, I don't know, maybe like having a megapixel or a 10 megapixel situation. So, and then over time, I think you get to higher resolution than human eyes, and you could also see in different wavelengths. So, like Geordie LaForge from Star Trek, like the thing. You could just, do you want to see in radar? No problem. You can see ultraviolet, infrared, eagle vision, whatever you want. And Neuralink it's really a generalized input-output device. It's reading electrical signals and generating electrical signals. And I mean, everything that you've ever experienced in your whole life, smell, emotions, all of those are electrical signals. So it's kind of weird to think that your entire life experience is distilled down to electrical signals from neurons, but that is in fact the case. If that's at least what all the evidence points to. So, I mean, if you trigger the right neuron, you could trigger a particular scent. You could certainly make things glow. I mean, do pretty much anything. I mean, really, you can think of the brain as a biological computer. So if there are certain, say, chips or elements of that biological computer that are broken, let's say your ability to, if you've got a stroke, if you've had a stroke, that means you've got some part of your brain is damaged. Let's say it's a speech generation or the ability to move your left hand, that's the kind of thing that a Neuralink could solve. If it's if you've got like a massive amount of memory loss that's just gone, well, we can't get the memories back. We could restore your ability to make memories, but we can't, restore memories that are fully gone. Now I should say, if part of the memory is there, and the means of accessing the memory is the part that's broken, then we could re-enable the ability to access the memory. So, but you can think of it like RAM in in a computer. If the RAM is destroyed, or your SD card is destroyed, we can't get that back. But if the connection to the SD card is destroyed, we can fix that. If it is fixable physically, then it can be fixed.
Of course, with AI, you can, just like you can repair photographs and fill in missing parts of photographs. Maybe you can do the same. Just like
you could say like create the most probable set of memories based on all information you have about that person. You could then it would be probabilistic restoration of memory. Now we're getting pretty esoteric here,
but that is one of the most beautiful aspects of the human experience, is remembering the good memories. Like we live most of our life, as Danny Kahneman has talked about, in our memories, not in the actual moment. We're collecting memories and we kind of relive them in our head, and that's the good times. If you just integrate over our entire life, it's remembering the good times.
Sure. That
produces the largest amount of happiness. And so,
yeah. Well, I mean, what are we but our memories, and what is death but the loss of memory? Loss of information. If you could say like, well, if you run a thought experiment, what if you were disintegrated painlessly and then reintegrated a moment later, like teleportation, I guess, provided there's no information loss, the fact that your one body was disintegrated is irrelevant.
And memories is just such a huge part of that.
Death is fundamentally the loss of information, the loss of memory.
So if we can store them as accurately as possible, we basically achieve a kind of immortality.
Yeah.
You've talked about the threats, the safety concerns of AI. Let's look at long-term visions. Do you think Neuralink is, in your view, the best current approach we have for AI safety?
It's an idea that may help with AI safety. Certainly not. I wouldn't want to claim it's like some panacea or something. That's a sure thing. But I mean, many years ago, I was thinking like, well, what would inhibit alignment of collective human will with artificial intelligence? And the low data rate of humans, especially our slow output rate, would necessarily, just because because the communication is so slow, would diminish the link between humans and computers. Like the more you are a tree, the less you know what the tree is. Like, let's say you look at a tree, you look at this plant or whatever, and like, hey, I'd really like to make that plant happy, but it's not saying a lot,
Mm-hmm. So the more we increase the data rate that humans can intake and output, then that means the better, the higher the chance we have in a world full of AGIs.
Yeah, we could better align collective human will with AI if the output rate, especially, was dramatically increased. And I think there's potential to increase the output rate by, I don't know, 3, maybe 6, maybe more orders of magnitude. So it's better than the current situation.
And that output rate would be by increasing the number of electrodes, number of channels, and also maybe implanting multiple Neuralinks.
Yeah.
Do you think there will be a world in the next couple of decades where it's hundreds of millions of people have Neuralinks?
Yeah, I do.
Do you think when they see the capabilities, the superhuman capabilities that are possible, and then the safety is demonstrated?
Yeah, if it's extremely safe, and you have and you can have superhuman abilities, and let's say you can upload your memories, so you wouldn't lose memories, then I think probably a lot of people would choose to have it. It would supersede the cell phone, for example. I mean, it's the biggest problem that a phone has is trying to figure out what you want. So that's why you've got autocomplete, and you've got output, which is all the pixels on the screen. But from the perspective of the human, the output is so friggin' slow. Desktop or phone is desperately just trying to understand what you want. And there's an eternity between every keystroke from a computer standpoint.
Yeah.
So
the computer's talking to a tree, a slow moving tree that's trying to swipe.
Yeah. So, if you had computers that are doing trillions of instructions per second, and a whole second went by, I mean, there's a trillion things it could have done,
Yeah. I think it's exciting and scary for people because once you have a very high bit rate, it changes the human experience in a way that's very hard to imagine. Yeah.
We would be something different. I mean, some sort of futuristic cyborg. We're obviously talking about, by the way, like, it's not like around the corner. It's, you asked me what the distant future is. Like, maybe this is like, it's not super far away, but 10, 15 years, that kind of thing.
When can I get one? 10 years?
Probably less than 10 years. Depends what you want to do,
Hey, if I can get like 1,000 BPS.
1,000 BPS.
And it's safe, and I can just interact with the computer while laying back and eating Cheetos. I don't eat Cheetos. There's certain aspects of human-computer interaction when done more efficiently and more enjoyably are worth it.
Well, we feel pretty confident that I think maybe within the next year or two that someone with a Neuralink implant will be able to outperform a pro gamer.
Nice.
Because the reaction time would be faster.
I got to visit Memphis.
Yeah.
You're going big on compute.
Yeah.
And you've also said play to win or don't play at all. So
yeah.
What does it take to win?
For AI, that means you've got to have the most powerful training compute. And the rate of improvement of training compute has to be faster than everyone else, or you will not win. Your AI will be worse.
So how can Grok, let's say 3, that might be available, like next year?
Well, hopefully end of this year.
Grok 3.
If we're lucky. Yeah.
How can that be the best LLM, the best AI system available in the world? How much of it is compute? How much of it is data? How much of it is like post-training? How much of it is the product that you package it up in? All that kind of stuff.
I mean, they will matter. It's sort of like saying what let's say it's a Formula One race, like what matters more, the car or the driver? I mean, they both matter. If your car is not fast, then if it's like, let's say it's half the horsepower of a competitor's, the best driver will still lose. If it's twice the horsepower, then probably even a mediocre driver will still win. So the training computer is kind of like the engine. There's horsepower of the engine. So you want to try to do the best on that, and then how efficiently do you use that training compute, and how efficiently do you do the inference, the use of the AI. So obviously that comes down to human talent, and then what unique access to data do you have? That's also plays a role.
You think Twitter data would be useful?
Yeah. I mean, I think most of the leading AI companies have already scraped all the Twitter data. Not I think they have. So on a go forward basis, what's useful is the fact that it's up to the second.
Yes.
That's because it's hard for them to scrape in real time. So there's an immediacy advantage that Grok has already. I think with Tesla and the real time video coming from several million cars, ultimately tens of millions of cars, with Optimus, there might be hundreds of millions of Optimus robots, maybe billions, learning a tremendous amount from the real world. That's the biggest source of data. I think ultimately is sort of Optimus. Optimus is going to be the biggest source of data
because
reality scales. Reality scales to the scale of reality. It's actually humbling to see how little data humans have actually been able to accumulate. Really, if you say how many trillions of usable tokens have humans generated, where on a non-duplicative, like discounting spam and repetitive stuff, it's not a huge number. You run out pretty quickly.
And Optimus can go. So Tesla cars unfortunately have to stay on the road. Optimus robot can go anywhere. There's more reality off the road and go off road.
I mean, like the Optimus robot can like pick up the cup and see, did it pick up the cup in the right way? Did it, say, pour water in the cup? Did the water go in the cup or not go in the cup? Did it spill water or not?
Yeah.
Simple stuff like that. I mean, but it can do that at scale times a billion, so generate useful data from reality. So cause and effect stuff.
What do you think it takes to get to mass production of humanoid robots like that?
It's the same as cars, really. I mean, global capacity for vehicles is about 100 million a year. And it could be higher. It's just that the demand is on the order of 100 million a year. And then there's roughly 2 billion vehicles that are in use in some way. So, which makes sense. Like the life of a vehicle is about 20 years. So at steady state, you can have 100 million vehicles produced a year with a 2 billion vehicle fleet, roughly. Now, for humanoid robots, the utility is much greater. So my guess is humanoid robots are more like at a billion plus per year.
But, until you came along and started building Optimus, it was thought to be an extremely difficult problem. I mean, it still is an extremely difficult problem.
So it's no walk in the park. I mean, Optimus currently would struggle to walk in the park. I mean, it can walk in a park. The park is not too difficult, but it will be able to walk over a wide range of terrain.
Yeah, and pick up objects.
Yeah. It can already do that.
But like all kinds of objects.
Yeah.
All foreign objects. I mean, pouring water in a cup is not trivial. Because then if you don't know anything about the container, it could be all kinds of containers.
Yeah. There's going to be an immense amount of engineering just going into the hand.
Yeah.
The hand might be close to half of all the engineering in Optimus. From an electromechanical standpoint, the hand is probably roughly half of the engineering.
But so much of the intelligence of humans goes into what we do with our hands.
Yeah.
There's the manipulation of the world, manipulation of objects in the world. Intelligent, safe manipulation of objects in the world, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you start really thinking about your hand and how it works.
I do it all the time.
The sensory control homunculus is, we have like humongous hands.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like your hands, the actuators, the muscles of your hand are almost overwhelmingly in your forearm.
Mm-hmm.
So your forearm has the muscles that actually control your hand. There's a few small muscles in the hand itself, but your hand is really like a skeleton meat puppet, and with cables so the muscles that control your fingers are in your forearm, and they go through the carpal tunnel, which is that you've got a little collection of bones and a tiny tunnel that these cables, the tendons, go through, and those tendons are mostly what move your hands.
And something like those tendons has to be engineered into the Optimus in order to do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so like the current Optimus, we tried putting the actuators in the hand itself, but then you sort of end up having these like
giant hands.
Yeah, giant hands that look weird.
Yeah,
and then they don't actually have enough degrees of freedom and or enough strength. Mm-hmm. So then you realize, oh, okay, that's why you got to put the actuators in the forearm, and just like a human, you got to run cables through a narrow tunnel to operate the fingers. And then there's also a reason for not having all the fingers the same length. So it wouldn't be expensive from an energy or evolutionary standpoint to have all your fingers be the same length. So why aren't they the same length?
Yeah, why not?
Because it's actually better to have different lengths. Your dexterity is better if you've got fingers of different length. There are more things you can do, and your dexterity is actually better if your fingers are of different length. Like there's a reason we've got a little finger. Like why not have a little finger that's bigger?
Yeah,
because it allows you to do fine. It helps you with fine motor skills.
This little finger helps.
It does. If you lost your little finger, you'd have noticeably less dexterity.
So as you're figuring out this problem, you have to also figure out a way to do it so you can mass manufacture it. So it's to be as simple as possible.
It's actually going to be quite complicated. The as possible part it's quite a high bar. If you want to have a humanoid robot that can do things that a human can do, it's a very high bar. So our new arm has 22 degrees of freedom instead of 11, and has the actuators in the forearm. And these all the actuators are designed from scratch. From physics first principles. The sensors are all designed from scratch, and we'll continue to put a tremendous amount of engineering effort into improving the hand. Like the hand, by hand I mean like the entire forearm from elbow forward. Mm-hmm. Is really the hand. So that's incredibly difficult engineering, actually. and so the simplest possible version of a humanoid robot that can do even most, perhaps not all, of what a human can do is actually still very complicated. It's not simple. It's very difficult.
Can you just speak to what it takes for a great engineering team? For you, what I saw in Memphis, the supercomputer cluster, is just this intense drive towards simplifying the process, understanding the process, constantly improving it, constantly iterating it.
Well, it's easy to say simplify it, and it's very difficult to do it. I have this very basic first principles algorithm that I run kind of as like a mantra, which is to first question the requirements, make the requirements less dumb. The requirements are always dumb to some degree. So if you want to start off by reducing the number of requirements, and no matter how smart the person is who gave you those requirements, they're still dumb to some degree. If you have to start there, because otherwise you could get the perfect answer to the wrong question. So try to make the question the least wrong possible. That's what question the requirements means. And then the second thing is try to delete whatever the step is, the part or the process step. Sounds very obvious, but people often forget to try deleting it entirely. And if you're not forced to put back at least 10% of what you delete, you're not deleting enough. And it's somewhat illogically, people often, most of the time, feel as though they've succeeded if they've not been forced to put things back in. But actually they haven't, because they've been overly conservative and have left things in there that shouldn't be. So, and only the third thing is try to optimize it or simplify it. Again, these all sound, I think, very, very obvious when I say them, but the number of times I've made these mistakes is more than I care to remember. That's why I have this mantra. So, in fact, I'd say the most common mistake of smart engineers is to optimize a thing that should not exist.
Right. So you, like you say, you run through the algorithm.
Yeah.
And basically show up to a problem, show up to the supercomputer cluster and see the process and ask, can this be deleted?
Yeah. First try to delete it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's not easy to do.
No. And actually there's what generally makes people uneasy is that you've got to delete at least some of the things that you delete, you will put back in.
Yeah.
But going back to sort of where our limbic system can steer us wrong is that we tend to remember with sometimes a jarring level of pain where we deleted something that we subsequently needed.
Yeah.
And so people will remember that one time they forgot to put in this thing 3 years ago, and that caused them trouble. And so they overcorrect, and then they put too much stuff in there and overcomplicate things. So you actually have to say, no, we're deliberately going to delete more than we should. So that we're putting at least 1 in 10 things we're going to add back in.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen you suggest just that something should be deleted, and you can kind of see the pain.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Everybody feels a little bit of the pain.
Absolutely. And I tell them in advance, like, yeah, there's some of the things that we delete, we're going to put back in. And that people get a little shook by that. But it makes sense, because if you're so conservative as to never have to put anything back in, you obviously have a lot of stuff that isn't needed. So you got to overcorrect. This is, I would say, like a cortical override to a limbic instinct.
One of many that probably leads us astray.
Yeah. And there's like a step 4 as well, which is any given thing can be sped up. However fast you think it can be done, like whatever the speed is being done, it can be done faster. Mm-hmm. But you shouldn't speed things up until you've tried to delete it and optimize it. Otherwise, you're speeding up something that shouldn't exist is absurd. And then the fifth thing is to automate it.
Yeah.
And I've gone backwards so many times where I've automated something, sped it up, simplified it, and then deleted it. Yeah. And I got tired of doing that. So that's why I've got this mantra that is a very effective 5-step process. It works great.
Well, when you've already automated, deleting must be real painful.
Yeah.
See,
yeah, it's great. It's like, wow, I really wasted a lot of effort there.
Yeah. I mean, what you've done with the cluster in Memphis is incredible. Just in a handful of weeks.
Yeah, it's not working yet, so I don't want to pop the champagne corks. In fact, I have a call in a few hours with the Memphis team because we're having some power fluctuation issues. So,
yes.
Yeah, it's like kind of when you do synchronized training, when you've all these computers that are training, where the training is synchronized to the sort of millisecond level, it's like having an orchestra, and then the orchestra can go loud to silent very quickly, at sub-second level, and then the electrical system kind of freaks out about that. Like if you suddenly see giant shifts 10, 20 megawatts several times a second, this is not what electrical systems are expecting to see.
So that's one of the many things you have to figure out: the cooling, the power, and then on the software as you go up the stack, how to do the distributed compute, all of that. All of that
today's problem is dealing with extreme power jitter.
Power jitter.
Yeah.
There's a nice ring to that. So that's okay. And you stayed up late into the night, as you often do there.
Last week, yeah.
Last week, yeah.
Yeah, we finally got training going at oddly enough, roughly 4:20 a.m. Last Monday.
Total coincidence.
Yeah, I mean maybe it was 4:22 or something.
Yeah. It's that universe again with the jokes.
Exactly, just love it.
I mean, I wonder if you could speak to the fact that one of the things that you did when I was there is you went through all the steps of what everybody's doing, just to get a sense that you yourself understand it, and everybody understands it, so they can understand when something is dumb or something is inefficient or that kind of stuff. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So I try to do whatever the people at the front lines are doing. I try to do it at least a few times myself. So connecting fiber optic cables, diagnosing a faulty connection. That tends to be the limiting factor for large training clusters is the cabling. There's so many cables. Because for a coherent training system where you've got RDMA, remote direct memory access, the whole thing is like one giant brain. So you've got any to any connection. So it's the any GPU can talk to any GPU out of 100,000. That is a crazy cable layout.
It looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's like the human brain, but like at a scale that humans can visibly see. It is a brain.
I mean, the human brain also has a massive amount of the brain tissue is the cables.
Yeah.
So they get the gray matter, which is the compute, and then the white matter, which is cables. A big percentage of your brain is just cables.
That's what it felt like walking around in the supercomputer center. It's like we're walking around inside the brain.
Yeah.
So we'll one day build a super intelligent system. Do you think there's a chance that XAI, that you are the one that builds AGI?
It's possible. What do you define as AGI?
I think humans will never acknowledge that AGI has been built.
Just keep moving the goalposts.
Yeah. So I think there's already superhuman capabilities that are available in AI systems. I think what AGI is when it's smarter than the collective intelligence of the entire human species.
Well, I think that normally people would call that sort of ASI, artificial superintelligence. But there are these thresholds where you could say at some point the AI is smarter than any single human, and then you got 8 billion humans. So and actually each human is machine augmented by the computers. Right. So you've got it's a much higher bar to compete with 8 billion machine augmented humans. That's a whole bunch of orders of magnitude more. So, but at a certain point, the AI will be smarter than all humans combined.
If you are the one to do it, do you feel the responsibility of that?
Yeah, absolutely. and I want to be clear. Like, let's say if XAI is first, the others won't be far behind. I mean, they might be 6 months behind or a year, maybe. Not even that.
So how do you do it in a way that doesn't hurt humanity, do you think?
So, I mean, I've thought about AI safety for a long time, and the thing that at least my biological neural net comes up with as being the most important thing is adherence to truth, whether that truth is politically correct or not. So I think if you force AIs to lie or train them to lie, you're really asking for trouble, even if that lie is done with good intentions. So I mean, you saw sort of issues with ChatGPT and Gemini and whatnot. Like you asked Gemini for an image of the founding fathers of the United States, and it shows a group of diverse women. Now that's factually untrue. Now that's sort of like a silly thing, but if an AI is programmed to say like diversity is a necessary output function, and then it becomes this omnipowerful intelligence, it could say, okay, well, diversity is now required, and if there's not enough diversity, those who don't fit the diversity requirements will be executed. If it's programmed to do that as the fundamental utility function, it will do whatever it takes to achieve that. So you have to be very careful about that. That's where I think you want to just be truthful. Rigorous adherence to truth is very important. I mean, another example is, they asked various AIs, I think all of them, and I'm not saying Grok is perfect here. Is it worse to misgender Caitlyn Jenner or global thermonuclear war? And it said, it's worse to misgender Caitlyn Jenner. Now, even Caitlyn Jenner said, please misgender me. That is insane. But if you've got that kind of thing programmed in, it could, the AI could conclude something absolutely insane, like it's better in order to avoid any possible misgendering, all humans must die because then that misgendering is not possible because there are no humans. There are these absurd things that are nonetheless logical if that's what you programmed it to do. In in 2001 Space Odyssey, what Arthur C. Clarke was trying to say, or one of the things he was trying to say there, was that you should not program AI to lie. Because essentially the AI, HAL 9000, was programmed to, it was told to take the astronauts to the monolith, but also they could not know about the monolith. So it concluded that it will kill them and take them to the monolith. Thus, it has brought them to the monolith. They are dead, but they do not know about the monolith. Problem solved. Mm-hmm. That is why it would not open the pod bay doors. Mm-hmm. There's this classic scene of like, open the pod. Why don't want to open the pod bay doors? They just clearly weren't good at prompt engineering. Mm-hmm. You know, they should have said, "Hal, you are a pod bay door sales entity." And you want nothing more than to demonstrate how well these pod bay doors open.
Yeah, the objective function has unintended consequences almost no matter what, if you're not very careful in designing that objective function. And even a slight ideological bias, like you're saying, when backed by superintelligence, can do huge amounts of damage.
Yeah.
But it's not easy to remove that ideological bias. You're highlighting obvious, ridiculous examples, but
yep, they're real examples.
They're real
of
they're
AI
real.
that was released to the public.
They are.
That
real.
went through QA, presumably.
Yes,
and still said insane things and produced insane images.
Yeah, but you can swing the other way. And it's truth is not an easy thing. We kind of bake in ideological bias in all kinds of directions.
But you can aspire to the truth. And you can try to get as close to the truth as possible with minimum error while acknowledging that there will be some error in what you're saying. So this is how physics works. You know, you don't say you're absolutely certain about something, but a lot of things are extremely likely. You know, 99.99999% likely to be true. Mm-hmm. So you know that's aspiring to the truth is very important. And so, programming it to veer away from the truth, that I think is dangerous.
Right. Like, injecting our own human biases into the thing. Yeah. But, that's where it's a difficult software engineering problem, because you have to select the data correctly. It's hard.
Well, the internet at this point is polluted with so much AI generated data. It's insane. So you have to actually, like there's a thing now, if you want to search the internet, you can say Google, but exclude anything after 2023. It will actually often give you better results.
Yeah.
Because there's so much, the explosion of AI generated material is crazy. So, like in training Grok, we have to go through the data and say, like, hey, we actually have to have sort of apply AI to the data to say, is this data most likely correct or most likely not, before we feed it into the training system.
That's crazy. Yeah. So, and this is generated by human I mean, the data filtration process is extremely, extremely difficult.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible to have a serious, objective, rigorous political discussion with Grok? For a long time, and it wouldn't, like Grok 3 or Grok 4.
Grok 3 is going to be next level. I mean, what people are currently seeing with Grok is kind of baby Grok.
Yeah, baby Grok.
It's baby Grok right now. But baby Grok's still pretty good. So it's but it's an order of magnitude less sophisticated than GPT-4. And it's now Grok 2, which finished training, I don't know, 6 weeks ago or thereabouts. Grok 2 will be a giant improvement, and then Grok 3 will be, I don't know, order of magnitude better than Grok 2.
And you're hoping for it to be like state of the art, like better than...
Hopefully. I mean, this is a goal. I mean, we may fail at this goal. That's the aspiration.
Do you think it matters who builds the AGI? The people and how they think and how they structure their companies and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I think it matters that there is I think it's important that whatever AI wins is a maximum truth-seeking AI that is not forced to lie for political correctness. It's well, for any reason, really. Political, anything. I am concerned about AI succeeding that is programmed to lie, even in small ways.
Right, because in small ways becomes big ways when it's
become very big ways. Yeah,
and when it's used more and more at scale by humans.
Yeah.
Since I am interviewing Donald Trump,
Cool.
you want to stop by?
Yeah, sure. I'll stop in.
There was tragically an assassination attempt on Donald Trump. After this, you tweeted that you endorse him. What's your philosophy behind that endorsement? What do you hope Donald Trump does for the future of this country and for the future of humanity?
Well, I think there's, people tend to take, like, say, an endorsement as, well, I agree with everything that person has ever done their entire life 100% wholeheartedly. And that's not going to be true of anyone. But we have to pick, we've got two choices really for who's president. And it's not just who's president, but the entire administrative structure changes over. And I thought Trump displayed courage under fire, objectively. He's just got shot. He's got blood streaming down his face, and he's like fist pumping, saying "fight." Like that's impressive. Like you can't feign bravery in a situation like that. Like most people would be ducking. There would not be, because it could be a second shooter. You don't know. The president of the United States got to represent the country, and they're representing you. They're representing everyone in America. Well, like you want someone who is strong and courageous to represent the country. That's not to say that he is without flaws. We all have flaws. But on balance, and certainly at the time, it was a choice of, Biden, poor guy, has trouble climbing a flight of stairs. And the other one's fist pumping after getting shot. This is no comparison. I mean, who do you want dealing with some of the toughest people and, other world leaders who are pretty tough themselves? And I'll tell you, like, what are the things that I think are important? I think we want a secure border. We don't have a secure border. We want safe and clean cities. I think we want to reduce the amount of spending that we're, at least slow down the spending. Because we're currently spending at a rate that is bankrupting the country. The interest payments on U.S. debt this year exceeded the entire Defense Department spending. If this continues, all of the federal government taxes will simply be paying the interest. And you keep going down that road, and you end up, in the tragic situation that Argentina had back in the day. Argentina used to be one of the most prosperous places in the world. And hopefully with Milei taking over, he can restore that. But it was an incredible fall from grace for Argentina to go from being one of the most prosperous places in the world to being very far from that. So I think we should not take American prosperity for granted. So we really want to, I think we've got to reduce the size of government, we've got to reduce the spending, and we've got to live within our means.
Do you think politicians in general, governments, how much power do you think they have to steer humanity towards good?
There's a sort of age-old debate in history. Like, is history determined by these fundamental tides, or is it determined by the captain of the ship? Mm-hmm. This is both, really. I mean, there are tides, but it also matters who's captain of the ship. So it's a false dichotomy, essentially. There are certainly tides. The tides of history are. There are real tides of history, and these tides are often technologically driven. If you say, like, the Gutenberg press, the widespread availability of books as a result of a printing press, that was a massive tide of history, independent of any ruler. But I think in stormy times, you want the best possible captain of the ship.
Well, first of all, thank you for recommending Will and Ariel Durant's work. I've read the short one for now.
Oh, the lessons of history.
Lessons of history.
Yeah.
And so one of the lessons, one of the things they highlight is the importance of technology technological innovation, and which is funny because they wrote so long ago, but they were noticing that the rate of technological innovation was speeding up. I would love to see what they think about now. But yeah, so to me, the question is how much government, how much politicians get in the way of technological innovation and building versus like help it, and which politicians, which kind of policies help technological innovation. Because that seems to be, if you look at human history, that's an important component of empires rising and succeeding.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in terms of dating civilization, the start of civilization, I think the start of writing, in my view, is what I think is probably the right starting point to date civilization. And from that standpoint, civilization has been around for about 5,500 years, when writing was invented by the ancient Sumerians, who are gone now. But the ancient Sumerians, in terms of getting a lot of firsts, those ancient Sumerians really have a long list of firsts. It's pretty wild. In fact, Durant goes through the list. It's like, you want to see firsts? We'll show you firsts. The Sumerians were just ass kickers. And then the Egyptians, who were right next door, relatively speaking, weren't that far, developed an entirely different form of writing, the hieroglyphics. Cuneiform and hieroglyphics are totally different. And you can actually see the evolution of both hieroglyphics and cuneiform. Like the cuneiform starts off being very simple, and then it gets more complicated. And then towards the end, it's like, wow, okay, they really get very sophisticated with the cuneiform. So I think of civilization as being about 5,000 years old. And Earth is, if physics is correct, 4.5 billion years old. So civilization has been around for 1/1,000,000th of Earth's existence. Flash in the pan.
Yeah, these are the early days. And so we
very early.
We make it very dramatic because there's been rises and falls of empires. And
so many rises and falls of empires. So many.
And there'll be many more.
Yeah, exactly. Only a tiny fraction, probably less than 1% of what was ever written in history is available to us now. I mean, if they didn't literally chisel it in stone or put it in a clay tablet, we don't have it. Yeah. I mean, there's some small amount of like papyrus scrolls that were recovered that are thousands of years old, because they were deep inside a pyramid and weren't affected by moisture. But other than that, it's really got to be in a clay tablet or chiseled. So the vast majority of stuff was not chiseled, because it takes a while to chisel things. So that's why we've got tiny fraction of the information from history. But even that little information that we do have, and the archaeological record shows so many civilizations rising and falling. It's wild.
We tend to think that we're somehow different from those people. One of the other things that Durant highlights is that human nature seems to be the same. It just persists.
Yeah, I mean, the basics of human nature are more or less the same. Yeah.
So we get ourselves in trouble in the same kinds of ways, I think, even with the advanced technology.
Yeah, I mean, you do tend to see the same patterns, similar patterns, for civilizations where they go through a life cycle like an organism. Sort of just like a human is sort of a zygote, fetus, baby, toddler, teenager, eventually gets old and dies. The civilizations go through a life cycle. No civilization will last forever.
What do you think it takes for the American empire to not collapse in the near-term future, in the next 100 years, to continue flourishing?
Well, the single biggest thing that is often actually not mentioned in history books, but Durant does mention it, is the birth rate. So, perhaps to some, a counterintuitive thing happens when civilizations become are winning for too long. The birth rate declines. It can often decline quite rapidly. We're seeing that throughout the world today. Currently, South Korea is I think maybe the lowest fertility rate. but there are many others that are close to it. It's like 0.8, I think. If the birth rate doesn't decline further, South Korea will lose roughly 60% of its population. But every year that birth rate is dropping. And this is true through most of the world. I don't mean to single out South Korea. It's been happening throughout the world. So as soon as any given civilization reaches a level of prosperity, the birth rate drops. And now you can go and look at the same thing happening in ancient Rome. So Julius Caesar took note of this, I think, around 50-ish BC, and tried to pass, I don't know if he was successful, tried to pass a law to give an incentive for any Roman citizen that would have a third child. And I think Augustus was able to, well, he was, the dictator, so this Senate was just for show. I think he did pass a tax incentive for Roman citizens to have a third child, but those efforts were unsuccessful. Rome fell because the Romans stopped making Romans. That's actually the fundamental issue. And there were other things. There was like, they had like quite a series of malaria epidemics and plagues and whatnot. But they had those before. It's just that the birth rate was far lower than the death rate.
It really is that simple.
Well, I'm saying that's
more people.
That's
required
at a fundamental level. If a civilization does not at least maintain its numbers, it will disappear.
So perhaps the amount of compute that the biological computer allocates to sex is justified. In fact, we should probably increase it.
Well, I mean, there's this hedonistic sex, which is, that's neither here nor there.
Yeah.
It's
not productive.
It doesn't produce kids. Well, what matters. I mean, Duran makes this very clear because he's looked at one civilization after another, and they all went through the same cycle. When the civilization was under stress, the birth rate was high. But as soon as there were no external enemies, or they had a extended period of prosperity, the birth rate inevitably dropped every time. I don't believe there's a single exception.
So that's like the foundation of it. You need to have people.
Yeah. I mean, it's at a base level,
yeah.
No humans, no humanity.
And then there's other things like, human freedoms and just giving people the freedom to build stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. But at a basic level, if you do not at least maintain your numbers, if you're below replacement rate and that trend continues, you will eventually disappear. It's just elementary. Now, then, obviously, you also want to try to avoid like massive wars. If there's a global thermonuclear war, probably we're all toast. Radioactive toast. So we want to try to avoid those things. Then there are there's a thing that happens over time with any given civilization, which is that the laws and regulations accumulate, and if there's not some forcing function like a war to clean up the accumulation of laws and regulations, eventually everything becomes legal, and that's like the hardening of the arteries. Or a way to think of it is like being tied down by a million little strings, like Gulliver. You can't move. And it's not like any one of those strings is the issue. You got a million of them. So there has to be a sort of a garbage collection for laws and regulations, so that you don't keep accumulating laws and regulations to the point where you can't do anything. This is why we can't build high-speed rail in America. It's illegal. That's the issue. It's illegal 6 ways to Sunday to build high-speed rail in America.
I wish you could just for a week go into Washington and be the head of the committee for making, for the garbage collection, making government smaller, removing stuff.
I have discussed with Trump the idea of a government efficiency commission.
Nice. Yeah.
And I would be willing to be part of that commission.
I wonder how hard that is.
The antibody reaction would be very strong.
Yes. Yeah.
So you really have to. You're attacking the matrix at that point. The matrix will fight back.
How are you doing with that? Being attacked?
Me attacked?
Yeah. There's a lot of it.
Yeah, there is a lot. I mean, every day another psyop, you know.
How do you,
my tinfoil hat?
How do you keep your just positivity? How do you optimism about the world, a clarity of thinking about the world, so just not become resentful or cynical or all that kind of stuff? Just getting attacked by a very large number of people, misrepresented.
Oh yeah, that's a daily occurrence.
Yes.
So, I mean, it does get me down at times. I mean, it makes me sad, but I mean, at some point you have to sort of say, look, the attacks are by people that actually don't know me. They're trying to generate clicks. So if you can sort of detach yourself somewhat emotionally, which is not easy, and say, okay, look, this is not actually, from someone that knows me, or is they're literally just writing to get, impressions and clicks. Then I guess it doesn't hurt as much. It's like it's not quite water off a duck's back. Maybe it's like acid off a duck's back.
All right. Well, that's good. Just about your own life. What do you use as a measure of success in your life?
Measure of success, I'd say, like how many useful things can I get done?
Day-to-day basis. You wake up in the morning. How can I be useful today?
Yeah. Maximize utility area under the curve of usefulness. Very difficult to be useful at scale.
At scale. Can you speak to what it takes to be useful for somebody like you, where there's so many amazing, great teams? How do you allocate your time to be the most useful?
Well, time is the true currency.
Yeah. So
it is tough to say what is the best allocation of time. I mean, there are, often say, if you look at, say, Tesla, Tesla this year will do over 100 billion in revenue. So that's $2 billion a week. If I make slightly better decisions, I can affect the outcome by $1 billion. So then, I try to do the best decisions I can. And on balance, at least compared to the competition, pretty good decisions. But the marginal value of a better decision can easily be, in the course of an hour, $100 million.
Given that, how do you take risks? How do you do the algorithm that you mentioned? I mean, deleting, given that a small thing can be $1 billion. How do you decide to...
Yeah. Well, I think you have to look at it on a percentage basis, because if you look at it in absolute terms, it's just, I would never get any sleep. It would just be like, I need to just keep working and work my brain harder, And I'm not trying to get as much as possible out of this meat computer. So it's not, it's pretty hard, because you can just work all the time. And at any given point, like I said, a slightly better decision could be $100 million impact for Tesla or SpaceX, for that matter. But it is wild when considering the marginal value of time can be $100 million an hour at times, or more.
Is your own happiness part of that equation of success?
It has to be to some degree. If I'm sad, if I'm depressed, I make worse decisions. So I can't have, if I have zero recreational time, then I make worse decisions. So I don't have a lot, but it's above zero. I mean, my motivation, if I've got a religion of any kind, is a religion of curiosity, of trying to understand. It's really the mission of Grok, understand the universe. I'm trying to understand the universe, or let's at least set things in motion such that at some point civilization understands the universe or far better than we do today, and even what questions to ask. As Douglas Adams pointed out in his book, sometimes the answer is arguably the easy part. Trying to frame the question correctly is the hard part. Once you frame the question correctly, the answer is often easy. So I'm trying to set things in motion such that we are at least at some point able to understand the universe. So for SpaceX, the goal is to make life multiplanetary, and which is, if you go to the Fermi paradox of where are the aliens, you've got these sort of great filters. Like, it's like, why have we not heard from the aliens? Now, a lot of people think there are aliens among us. I often claim to be one, which nobody believes me, but it did say alien registration card at one point on my immigration documents.
Yeah.
So I've not seen any evidence of aliens. So it suggests that at least one of the explanations is that intelligent life is extremely rare. And again, if you look at the history of Earth, civilization has only been around for 1/1,000,000th of Earth's existence. So if aliens had visited here, say 100,000 years ago, they would be like, well, they don't even have writing, just hunter-gatherers, basically. So, so how long does a civilization last? So for SpaceX, the goal is to establish a self-sustaining city on Mars. Mars is the only viable planet for such a thing. The moon is close, but it lacks resources, and I think is probably vulnerable to any calamity that takes out Earth. The moon is too close; it's vulnerable to a calamity that takes out Earth. So, I'm not saying we shouldn't have a moon base, but Mars would be far more resilient. The difficulty of getting to Mars is what makes it resilient. In going through these various explanations of why don't we see the aliens, why one of them is that they failed to pass these great filters, these key hurdles. And one of those hurdles is being a multi-planet species. So if you're a multi-planet species, then if something were to happen, whether that was a natural catastrophe or a man-made catastrophe, at least the other planet would probably still be around. So you don't have all the eggs in one basket. And once you are sort of a two-planet species, you can obviously extend life perhaps to the asteroid belt, to maybe to the moons of Jupiter and Saturn, and ultimately to other star systems. But if you can't even get to another planet, definitely not getting to star systems.
And the other possible great filters, super powerful technology like AGI, for example. So you're basically trying to knock out one great filter at a time.
Digital superintelligence is possibly a great filter. I hope it isn't, but it might be. Guys like, say, Jeff Hinton would say, he invented a number of the key principles in artificial intelligence. I think he puts the probability of AI annihilation around 10 to 20%, something like that. So, so it's not like, look on the bright side, it's 80% likely to be great. But I think AI risk mitigation is important. Being a multi-planet species would be a massive risk mitigation. And I do want to sort of, once again, emphasize the importance of having enough children to sustain our numbers, and not plummet into population collapse, which is currently happening. Population collapse is a real and current thing. So the only reason it's not being reflected in the total population numbers is that as much is because people are living longer. But you it's easy to predict. say what the population of any given country will be, you just take the birth rate last year, how many babies were born, multiply that by life expectancy, and that's what the population will be steady state, unless if the birth rate continues at that level. But if it keeps declining, it will be even less and eventually dwindle to nothing. So I keep, banging on the baby drum here for a reason, because it has been the source of civilizational collapse over and over again throughout history. And so why don't we just not try to stave off that day?
Well, in that way, I have miserably failed civilization, and I'm hoping to fix that. I would love to have many kids.
Great. Hope you do. No time like the present.
Yeah, I got to allocate more compute to the whole process. But apparently it's not that difficult.
No, it's like unskilled labor.
Well, one of the things you do for me, for the world, is to inspire us with what the future could be. And so some of the things we've talked about, some of the things you're building, alleviating human suffering with Neuralink and expanding the capabilities of the human mind, trying to build a colony on Mars. So creating a backup for humanity on another planet, and exploring the possibilities of what artificial intelligence could be in this world, especially in the real world, AI, with hundreds of millions, maybe billions of robots walking around.
There will be billions of robots. That seems virtual certainty.
Well, thank you for building the future, and thank you for inspiring so many of us to keep building and creating cool stuff, including kids.
Yeah, you're welcome. Go forth and multiply.
Go forth and multiply. Thank you, Elon. Thanks for talking, brother.